Oh, look at the old E46 in red. That's cool. Right, this 1 litre now has got to overtake this JCB. Will I make it? Will I make it? Breezed it, mate. At no point there was I panicking. My slightly sweaty palms might disagree. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I've got a question for you. What do you buy if you want a well-built, good quality car, but you don't want to drive around in something as big as a BMW 5 Series or an Audi A6? Well, I think the answer lies here in this little Audi A1. More often than not, the smaller the car is, the less equipped it becomes. It's usually only big German saloon cars which feel well built, of good quality, and come with all the bells and whistles. The only real option people have if they want a high quality, well equipped small car is the Mini. But of course Minis are quite cramped on the inside, the ride's very firm, and most of them have a very unreliable Peugeot engine, so that rules out the Mini. Plus the styling's a bit cutesy, isn't it? What if you just want a straight car? Well, I think that's what the Audi A1 is. The Audi A1's been around since 2010 and it was only recently replaced with the second generation. In 2015 it had some light Botox, some lip fillers and a mild facelift. In layman's terms it basically got a bigger grille and a slightly nicer interior. You'll also be pleased to know that it wades through water quite well. Styling wise it isn't cute or fussy like the Mini is there. Some might even call it bland, but I wouldn't. I think it's sensible, very Germanic, very solid. It doesn't try to be fun or gimmicky, it's just classy. It's quite sophisticated, I think. I should point out early on though, it is quite a feminine choice. I think if you're a bit of an alpha male and you want something a bit more masculine, then you're better off with an Audi A3. But if you're not completely enveloped in toxic masculinity, then that shouldn't bother you. I don't think it'd bother me if I wanted a little city car. I quite like the A1. Of course, coming from Audi, it's loosely based on the VW Polo, which is no bad thing. In fact, the engines are lifted straight from the Polo too. Danke. There are a couple of turbocharged petrol engines. There's a 1 litre, 1.2 and a 1.4. Then there are a couple of diesels too. There's a 1.6 litre turbo diesel, which is free to tax and it'll do 74 miles per gallon. Or there's a 2 litre turbo diesel, which hardly anybody knows about, and they're terrific. It's almost, and I know you'll disagree with me now because a diesel can't be a hot hatch, but that 2 litre turbo diesel A1 is almost a hot hatch. It's a very powerful engine in a car which only weighs 1,000 kilos. They even made a high performance model with all-wheel drive called the S1. Most A1s came with a manual gearbox, which is really pleasant to use, but if you prefer your cars to only have 2 pedals, not 3, then they also did an auto, and it's a proper auto, not one of those silly semi-autos you get with Fiats and most other small cars. Moving inside the little A1, the interior is lovely. I mean, it won't blow you away or anything, but the quality is really good. Everything you touch and feel feels as though it'll last for a very long time. And that isn't a feeling that I'm used to with Super Minis. It all feels very well screwed together. There is a slightly annoying rattle coming from down here near the cup holders every time my leg rubs against it, but apart from that, there aren't any others. You get this pop-up infotainment screen here. It's also got digital DAB radio, so you can listen to things like Heart Dance and History. It has air conditioning, 4 electric windows, heated mirrors, 2 cup holders. It all feels quite upmarket. In typical Audi fashion though, they are quite mean with extras. Take for example the sat-nav. There's a button there for it, but when you press it, it says, sorry, the first owner was a cheapskate and didn't spec it. The same goes for a reverse camera, cruise control. All of those you have to put your hand in your pocket and pay extra for. Okay, something like a Mini or a DS3 feels quirkier and a bit more funky, but this feels much more upmarket. I also like the aeronautical inspired air vents. And I mean, for a small car, this is under 4 meters long. It doesn't feel cramped. You can adjust the seat so you sit down quite low. Visibility is very good. There's plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, plenty of elbow room. I'm 5'10" or 11 if I'm wearing some boots, and I think there's plenty of room. It's not the same story in the back though. It is quite cramped. This particular model's a 5-seater, but quite a few of them were only 4. So if that's important to you, make sure you do your homework before you hand over any money. Moving back to the boot, that's not a bad size for a Super Mini. It offers 270 litres of space with the seats up, and the seats fold, and with those seats folded, then the space improves to about 1,000 litres. So it is quite a practical little car, this. It's also a very safe one. It scored top marks on its Euro NCAP safety rating. It got all 5 stars. You've got airbags everywhere and even ISOFIX points in the rear seats. It all makes the A1 a very competent, clever little thing. The model I'm in today is a 5-door, but it's also available as a 3-door, which does look a bit sportier, but you do sacrifice some practicality. And it's quite a fun little car to drive. The engines are all quite punchy, and because it only weighs a ton, it feels quite chuckable, quite light on its feet. The steering's also very light and very easy to use, and the actual steering wheel itself feels very good quality. It's wrapped in nice soft leather. And you've got buttons here to control the radio. On a lot of small cars like the Mini, the ride is intolerable. It's so stiff, it just ruins it. I just wouldn't want to use that every single day. Not only would it give me a bad back, it'd also give me a headache. But I found the A1 to be a bit softer. I mean, you'll never think you're in a Rolls-Royce Phantom, but it's not bad. I'm currently sat here at 60 miles an hour and there's not an awful lot of road noise or wind noise. So although the A1 is definitely without doubt a city car, it's also a car which you can take on the motorway with ease. Especially if you go for one of the diesels with a 6-speed box. The model I'm in today has a tiny 1-litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, and it produces about 95 horsepower, which means this car's good for 0 to 60 in just under 10 seconds. Which I know sounds slow, but it does feel quite nippy, or nippier than that figure suggests anyway. In fact, 0 to 40 feels quite, not quick, but certainly not slow. And that's what you want from a city car. You need something which will zip in and out of traffic and not feel slow and lethargic. Reliability-wise, I've had lots of these over the years, and I haven't had any big, horrifying warranty claims. I found them to be no less reliable than anything else. Actually saying that, we did have one once, a 1.2-litre turbocharged petrol, and it blew its turbo at 12,000 miles. And it was only 3 years old. In fact, it was 3 years old and 1 week. It was 1 week out of its Audi warranty, and they wouldn't cover it. So we had to put a new turbo on it, and that cost about £1,000. But that was, I think, an isolated incident. I recently got one of these in part exchange. That was a diesel, and it was an ex-driving school car, and it had done 140,000 miles, and it was still going strong with no issues. The diesel models are only really worth buying if you're going to do more than 15,000 miles a year. If you only plan to use it around town and you buy the diesel, you're going to have issues with the DPF, the EGR valve, possibly the turbo, the injectors. So I'd recommend, unless you do big miles, just stick with the petrol. The fuel tank's only 45 litres, so in today's cost that'll cost you around £70 to fill. The road tax here in the UK is quite reasonable. None of them are expensive. The 1.6 diesel is free. The 2-litre diesel is only £30. The petrols are a bit higher, but not eye-wateringly so. If you go with the diesel, it has a timing belt which needs to be replaced, and that'll cost you between £300 and £400. The petrols are all chain driven, so that isn't an issue. And as long as you do regular oil changes, then that change should last the lifetime of the car. Should, I said. Should. So make sure you change your oil every 8 or 10,000 miles max. The only real downside with the A1 is the price. They were expensive when they were new, and they're still expensive used. The residual values of these is quite high, so although it'll cost you £2,000 or £3,000 more than the equivalent Fiesta, you will get that money back when you come to sell it. Or at least most of that money anyway. Used prices here in the UK start around £4,000, but all that's going to buy you is an early high mileage example which has been written off and then repaired. You'll have to spend around £6,000 to find yourself a nice one. For one like this is a post-facelift 2016 model with 55,000 miles on the clock. This will set you back around £10,000. Now if you compare that to a high-spec Ford Fiesta 2016 with similar miles, the Fiesta I would say would cost you probably £8,000. So it is a couple of grand more expensive than the Fiesta, but if you keep it 3 or 5 years, it'll still be worth £1,000 or so more than the Fiesta. There are a few competitors if you want a small upmarket car like this, but most are a bit fussy, a bit cutesy. Things like the DS3, the Mini, the Alfa Mito, but they're all chihuahuas on wheels, aren't they? They're all Michael Kors handbags with windscreen wipers. Whereas the A1's a bit more sensible, a bit more clinical. You might think because it's an Audi that the servicing costs will be extortionate, but that's not the case. Standard service items aren't any more expensive than any of the other cars I've rattled off. Things like tyres aren't expensive either. Expect a standard service to cost you around £120 and a full to cost you £200. It isn't a car then that'll break the bank. This little 1 litre that I've been using today has averaged 46 miles per gallon. And that, in quite worrying economic times, is a sight to behold. Far better than looking at the 2 little ducks which my Range Rover constantly reads out. Overall then, I'm quite impressed with this car. It looks okay, it's quite nice to be in, the seats are nice and comfortable, it's cheap to run, it's a pleasure to drive and be in. I could think of far worse cars to buy for the money than this. Well, I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. Check out my second channel, High Peak Property, if you're interested in house renovations and that sort of thing. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.